So we yeah, certainly, yeah. Why don't we start? We do have a quorum. Thanks, Ken. Very good. Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone to the July 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Edina Planning Commission. As we're all getting used to by now, we're conducting this via electronic conference call, video call, to comply with the stay-at-home order and general health and welfare of the community. All members of the Planning Commission, staff, and all presenters are participating from either their homes or their offices. I believe everyone can see and hear everyone. The technology is working pretty well. Every now, I'll just give a little warning. I mean, still every now and then we have technology snafus, and they can come. So I ask everyone just to be patient if it happens. Tonight's meeting includes 5 public hearings. There is a 3.6 foot side yard setback variance for an addition at 6125 Westridge Boulevard, a variance from the basement requirements for a new home on Brittany Road, a 23.5 foot front yard setback variance for a canopy structure with a sign on an existing ATM for Gateway Bank at 4528 France Avenue, site plan review for 3451 Park Lawn Avenue for York Gardens, and a public hearing regarding zoning ordinance amendments regarding setbacks and other matters in the Southdale area, citywide affordable housing policy ordinance, and an ordinance related to the number of garage stalls required in various types of housing. And also just another preliminary here, I just want to tell people that even though we are conducting these meetings instead of in person, we're conducting them electronically. The city is very committed to receiving feedback from the residents, and we've been collecting input by voicemail, by the city's engagement website, which is bettertogetheredina.org, and by email through an online correspondence form. And so any comments that have been submitted should have been reviewed before this meeting. And there is an opportunity for everyone who wishes to participate during the public hearings, the 5 public hearings. But know that if you don't participate in the 5 public hearings, if you contributed previously through one of the other avenues, that your feedback was still received. And in fact, you don't need to communicate again if you don't want to, if you've already contributed your feedback through another method. If you want to provide testimony during one of the public hearings tonight, call 1-800-374-0221 with conference ID 148642. Press *1 to be placed into queue. And you'll have up to 3 minutes. Staff will let you know when you're approaching and when you've hit the 3-minute limit. Note also, traditionally in meetings, there's an opportunity for community comment for matters unrelated to the agenda items. So far during our electronic meetings, we're not having community comment. So if you have a matter you'd like to communicate to us about a matter not on our agenda, we encourage you to use one of the other methods described earlier, particularly either the online comment form or a voicemail, which you can find on the Planning Commission, on the Planning Department's webpage. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we're still using technology. Thank you in advance for your patience as we conduct electronically. That said, I guess it's time to kick off the meeting, and we can take roll. The staff member, Liz Olson, will you take roll, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Strauss?
Here.
Commissioner Agnew?
Present.
Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Miranda?
Here.
Chair Nemerov?
Here. Thank you. We've all received the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Question for staff and Commissioners, if there's not, is there, we have to move and approve every item on our
I
agenda.
move to approve the agenda.
A second.
Thank you. Motion a second. Liz, for the people watching and listening, we have to do everything by a roll vote. Liz, will you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Strauss,
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett,
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda,
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. Thank you, Liz. And then finally, before we get to the public hearing section of the meeting, we have minutes from our last meeting on July 8th. Does anyone have any changes or additions to those minutes or a motion to approve them?
Move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the July 8th minutes. Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett, Commissioner Agnew,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
I wasn't here for that meeting, so do I have to still vote? Aye. Guess aye.
Commissioner Miranda,
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. And we've quickly come to the item 5 on our agenda, which is public hearings. The first item is a 3.6-foot side yard setback variance for an addition at 6125 West Ridge Boulevard. Presenting on behalf of the City of Edina is Assistant Planner Chris Ocker.
Thank you. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the subject property is approximately 19,500 square feet in area, consists of a one-story home with a tuck-under garage. It's located along the west side of West Ridge Boulevard. They are requesting a 3.6-foot side yard setback variance for the first floor addition of an existing non-conforming garage at 6125 West Ridge Boulevard. So here's the survey of the existing conditions. The home was built in 1956. It's original in construction. The third garage stall was added in the 1990s, and it met all of the ordinance requirements at the time, as did the rest of the house, with the exception, without needing any variances. However, the zoning ordinances have changed, and it does require a minimum 10-foot side yard setback. So you can see where the dashed line is that the existing garage overlaps into the setback area. This is a photo of the existing home, and what they'd simply like to do is to add a room above the garage. They will actually have a deck in the forward portion of it with the room addition towards the back. The roof line will remain the same. It'll just be extended. It'll have the same height. Here are elevations of the existing conditions and the existing floor plan and what they're proposing. There would be a room more towards the back of the home, and then an open deck area above the garage with a roof above. So here are the plans and side elevations, rear elevation. It's just an extension matching up to that sidewall. And then the front elevation, you can see that the room area is actually recessed with the deck area forward above the garage. Some renderings, the coloring, front elevation, existing and proposed floor plans, and then the rendering in context with the homes on either side. The spacing between the homes will remain the same. The only difference is that addition above the existing garage. So the question is, will this relieve practical difficulties present? Is it a reasonable use of the site? The practical difficulty is that the existing north side wall of the home is closer to the side lot line. It's also not parallel to the lot line. If they were to add on to the back of the garage, they could match the existing non-conforming setback as they go further back into the lot. But that alternate setback standard does not apply if you want to add on above an existing non-conforming area of the house, so they do have to address that with the variance. The home was built and the garage addition was built under standards that did not require a variance and conformed at the time. However, now it is non-conforming given that the ordinances have changed. Granting the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The applicants are hoping to provide additional interior space above that tuck under garage. It'll blend in with the existing home and existing conditions that are there currently. We have not received any comments on the Better Together Edina site, and I'm not aware of receiving any voicemail or any other correspondence. With that, staff does recommend approval of the variance of 3.6 feet tied to the plans that were presented. And I will stop and answer any questions you may have. Erin and Amber Kohler, who are the applicants and owner of the property, are also within this WebEx meeting to address the Planning Commission. With that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. Do any planning commissioners have questions for Chris? Jerry.
Yeah, Chris, thanks. Yeah, Chris, thanks. I think it's pretty clear. So what we're talking is along the north side of the north property line of the building. And
Correct.
the encroachment is what already exists, right? So there's no change. It's just that they're building over what's already a sort of.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then I guess my other question, and I look into it, there should not be any landscaping changes. I mean, it looks like there's a tree line along that lot line, and that should be unaffected, I would believe.
I believe so. I think the applicant could probably address that issue. It will be a very seamless addition. I mean, there isn't going to be any increase in height. There won't be any increase in the building footprint. And in fact, the addition itself won't actually encompass the entire area. There'll be a deck towards the front of the house.
Yeah, maybe we will. I can ask the applicant, but it doesn't look like there's any need to disturb, the landscaping to the north. So, okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions for Chris?
I do.
Lou, please.
Would there be any other variances required if they wanted to fill in that deck and close it at a later date?
Well, that's a good question. Because it needed a variance to be located within that non-conforming area, I would have to say yes, they would have to
Okay, thanks.
get a variance.
Thanks, Lou. Any other commissioners at this time? All right, well, thank you. We'll get a chance later if we need to, but this is an opportunity for the applicant if you'd like to say anything about your project.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Yes, very well.
My name's Erin Kohler. I live at 6125 Westridge Boulevard. My wife and children and I have lived here for about 8 years. I don't have a lot to add. I think staff's presentation was pretty thorough and covered kind of the pertinent issues. This is going to kind of a long, this is sort of a home remodel that just kind of keeps chasing itself. This started as trying to remodel 2 1956 bathrooms into something that was a workable size, which came to be, we can do that without eliminating a bedroom, but a bedroom that we use. So we're trying to replace that space. But come to find out, it requires a variance as it sits in the setback. But when we moved in, it feels natural with the way the neighborhood was when we moved in anyway. Given the house to the south used to be its original construction, you could stand at the fence line and touch the house, but our house was shifted to the north as well, so there was a good gap there. and it's the same to the house to the north. Their house is shifted to the north as well. So it always just sort of felt natural, and that nobody was really creeping in on anybody else. Yeah, I think the only other thing I'd add is just, neighborhood sentiment. I'm not aware of any objection from neighbors. The neighbors who would be the most impacted to the north is a little bit of a unusual situation. Their house is currently under contract with a builder, and they're closing at the end of August. So the current residents don't have a lot at stake. And my understanding is that the builder does not have a buyer at this point, so the house will be rented for some period of time. But from a scale standpoint, I would venture that the house that goes there in the future will be of a much larger scale, and probably dwarf the addition that we're proposing. So with that, to answer the commissioner's question on the tree line, we don't intend to impact any trees. There's one tree that has a couple branches that hang over the current garage, so there'll have to be a couple branches that get trimmed, but all of the trees will stay as they are. That I take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kohler. Commissioner Agnew. Kate.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us tonight. You mentioned that you had started down this journey of the remodel in order to get, it sounded like, potentially your bathrooms increased in size, but it doesn't look like the bathrooms are actually being affected by this remodel.
Yeah, so
are you getting what you want out of this remodel, or are you going to have to do a second phase down the road?
Yeah, so the original intent has now become phase 2 of create the bedroom that we'd be destroying, to replace the one we'd be destroying, and then phase 2 will be, all right, now we can tear apart this bedroom and expand bathrooms into it. Yes, the number one priority has now become phase 2.
Thank you. I think that's the only question I had, Ian.
Thank any other commissioners with questions for the applicant.
I have a question.
Lou.
So it looks like from the elevation is that looking at the rendering, looking at plans and renderings 1 of 3, or I guess it's rendering A2.2, and it shows the back of the house where the addition will be, and it looks like there's patio doors there. Is there plans to build a patio at some point?
At the moment, the plan we have a patio off on another portion of the house. The plan was just to create kind of a basic stoop and steps down to the backyard from that space.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Lou. Any other commissioners with questions for this applicant? Well, thank you. Maybe, Mr. Kohler, there might be more coming. I can't promise that you're off the hot seat, but thank you so far. At this point in the meeting, it's a public hearing, so this would be the opportunity for members of the public to call in and give their testimony. I'll repeat the numbers to call. It's 1-800-374-0221, conference ID 148-6462. Press star 1. The operator will put you into queue. Because of delays between filming and as this goes out, we'll wait for a moment. Let's see if anyone calls. And this could be the time we all do we all figure out how we can improve our own backgrounds.
Chair Nemerov, this is Communications Director Jennifer Bennerat. I do not have anyone on the line right now. As you mentioned, it would be a good idea for you to wait a minute or so before moving on, as there is a slight delay with the broadcast.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Just to let the anticipation build.
That's right. There should be like Jeopardy music or something.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And sometimes we get a lot of calls and sometimes we don't get calls. So different matters.
I won't take offense to people's lack of interest.
Good attitude. Good. Jennifer, do you think we could move on? Should we wait just another
I
few
think
moments?
it's safe for you to move on.
Okay. Is there, could we, Commissioners, motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
I second.
Motion second. Liz, could you do a roll, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda,
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett,
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. Which means it's now opportunity for the Planning Commission to discuss this matter and, or make a motion. Does anyone have any further comments, which may include your position or things you're thinking about or your characterization, your explanation for how you'd like to vote on this matter? Or further questions, too, that might help you make a decision. Hi, Kate.
Thank you. To me, this seems like a relatively low impact with the footprint of the house really not expanding. It's really just over that second level. And given that there aren't any concerns from neighbors or any other community members, I think that this variance seems reasonable.
Commissioner. Anyone else? Jerry?
I move to approve the request for variance as submitted by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll go with
Second.
Joanne. Thank you. Liz, could you do a roll vote? Is there any further for discussion, first of all? Any commissioners? Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda,
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett,
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. Well, that concludes that matter. That matter's been approved. Carrie or Chris, does that go to the city council now?
It does not unless it's appealed to the city council. After 10 days, then the decision stands.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And good luck, Mr. Kohler.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You also. Our next matter is a variance from the basement requirements for a new home to be constructed at 6800 Brittany Road. Again, appearing on behalf of, presenting on behalf of the city is Assistant Planner Chris Ocker.
Thank you. This is a request for a variance from the basement requirement for a new home to be built at 6800 Brittany Road. The subject property is located on the west side of Brittany Road. It had a home on it, a Rambler, that was built in the 1970s. It has since been removed. It is a vacant lot. The lot is almost 43,000 square feet, so it's a very large lot. The property owner is hoping to build on the site. This is the footprint of the home. It fits comfortably on the lot. It covers, coverage is under the current requirements. The height is a one-story home that's being proposed. And that is why there's a request for no basement. The ordinance does require at least a 50% basement under all new homes. The homeowner has indicated that they would just like a one-level living plan. It's not a two-story home. It's actually very low profile. It's about little over 22 feet in height, a little under 23 feet in height. So this is the front elevation of the home. Sides. And then previously was the back portion of the home. It has been reviewed by the engineering department regarding grading and drainage. It complies with their requirements. The ordinance does require a 50% basement under all new homes that are built. I believe that the requirement was meant because typically basements are used for storage, mechanicals, and then for storm shelter. The applicant has indicated that none of those things are necessary for them to have a basement, that they don't need to accommodate those uses for a basement. The home is a permitted use and the single dwelling unit district complies with all of the ordinance standards with the exception of the basement. Granting the variance will be in keeping with the character of the surrounding properties. It's a one-story home. It fits very comfortably on the lot. It's a very large lot. The home design reflects the character of the neighborhood in regards to height, scale, and mass, and the home is appropriate in size and meets the needs of the current owner. The city did not receive any comments through the Better Together Edina site, nor did we receive any phone messages regarding the request. There were public hearing notices that went out within 200 feet of the property, so the adjacent neighbors and some further out have been notified. Staff does support the request and recommends approval of the plans based on the plans presented. The homeowner, Patricia Johnson, and then also her architect, Leffert Tigler, is on the WebEx. And if you have any questions of them, they're here to stand for that. And I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Chris, do any commissioners have questions for Chris?
Yeah,
Jerry.
Yeah, Chris, thanks. This whole basement requirement, I guess it hasn't come up before a request,
No.
so it's not a driving need for attention, but I'm wondering if it goes to the bottom of a proposed work plan to look at. This requirement. I understand it. I knew.
Sure.
Homes that didn't have basements always usually had some sort of crawl or utility room, because that's where you brought in things. So, but I'm assuming that's all, designed, that you don't need to crawl down to get to the water meter and sewer lines and stuff. So, but I don't know. Like I said, it hasn't come up, so I guess it's not consuming a great deal of our time, but it certainly seems.
Well, it's actually an excellent suggestion because in terms of affordability, if it's something that isn't necessary to have, if you can have a slab on grade home, it may be more cost effective for some people if it isn't something that's needed.
Yeah.
So to maybe perhaps change the ordinance or look at it would be something to do on a work plan.
The issue of a basement providing storm shelter, would that be a factor of maybe the terrain, like where, if it's, but there again, it's sort of severe weather does happen and all that kind of stuff, but, there again, I like I said, it doesn't come up that often, so maybe we just deal with them as they occur. All right, thank you.
Any other commissioners with questions for staff?
This is Commissioner Agnew. I have.
Is that Kate? Hi,
question.
Commissioner Agnew, please.
So I was also doing some Google research on some other reasons why basements might be required. I think that there were the couple that were obviously discussed already, but one that potentially could be of concern is like the home shifting if it's not rooted in the ground. I know that we had engineering approve this and review it. Did anything like that come up in those reviews, Chris?
No, and there'll be a more careful review, obviously, for permit application, and they will look at all of that. And yeah, that should not be a problem, and they are not going to let it be a problem.
Okay, great, thank you. That concludes my questions.
I have a question.
Okay, Lou, please.
Yeah, so regarding to Commissioner Strauss' comment about us reviewing these before, I think we reviewed one about a year ago, maybe longer, where I think it was near Braemar Park. It was just east of there, and it was a very large house, and I don't think they were building a basement there. And my concern here, which is similar to my concern there, which is not that I think we should say no, but again, in terms of a safe haven or whatever, just in terms of climate change, in terms of our weather getting more severe, we had a heat index of 106 on Saturday, and Edina was pretty brutal here, and that just brings on more severe weather, like tornadoes and flooding and such. So, I just hope the residents are planning for that sort of thing, and that there's some safe place for them to go. Because that's really my only concern is trying to figure out what happens in bad situations. But do you remember that, Chris? It was about a year or so ago where we talked about this house as something like this very large house by Braemar Park. But anyway, I guess that was more of a statement than a question. Sorry.
I do know that they're using the pantry as a storm shelter. Chris, do you have those plans available so that we could take another second look at where that's positioned in the house?
I don't have the floor plans in the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. I do know that was a part of our pre-read materials. So they are taking that into account, it appears.
Well, sure, but flooding, getting stuck in a pantry isn't great in a flood.
Probably not great in a basement either.
Any other questions for staff? So I had two. One is following up on some of these storm, tornado type situations. It was my understanding, and not based on tremendous amounts of historical knowledge, that the original goal for basement was in case of tornado, but that the thinking has changed over the years. In fact, now I think they recommend people to go into the tub and pull a mattress over them if they need to. Chris, do you know anything about? I think we've talked about that. Is that? Is that the current guidance, or is that why the need for a basement is less needed than it used to be?
I don't think I can answer that.
Okay. Second question, something completely different.
Okay.
On the site plan document, and this might be a question for the applicant, and I'm not sure quite yet if this is relevant to the question of whether or not to have a basement, but it is something I noticed and I wanted to ask about it. It appears I see a lot of X's on the document, including as you go, away from the house on the left side of the page. Are the X's existing trees that are going to be removed?
I'm the applicant. I can answer that question if you'd like.
Okay.
Those are spot elevations by the surveyor. So when you look at that X, it has a number right next to it or right on top of it, and it says 918.1, for instance, on one of those.
I see it. Sorry, Mr. Tigler. Is that all you wanted to say?
Oh yes. Well, I thought I'd just clarify that. Yeah, it does look rather alarming, doesn't it? All those X's.
Thank you. Well, this would be the opportunity now. Planning commissioners could have further questions for staff later. But would you like to say something about the application? It'd be a pleasure to hear from you if you have anything.
Just a little bit. I don't know, Chris, did I miss the renderings that we did for the project, and they're not necessarily needed? The house is designed to to blend in with the neighborhood really well. It's a large footprint, but it's divided into, and I can share my screen, I guess, and show this. It was part of your package as well. Let me just do this one here. So it shows the exterior of the house. So this is the front of the house in its context. We are planning to take a few feet off the top of the hill and level out and we're quite at this is quite it's a site that it's at a good elevation here, and we're taking a little bit off to flatten out the site. And then we've divided, the house is organized around a open courtyard, but it's divided, instead of putting a really big roof on the whole thing and make it look like it's scaled back a little bit by adding multiple dormers and so forth. The roof has been divided into multiple parts and pieces, basically, to bring the scale down. The width of the front gables here, and that's just kind of a typical width in this design, is 18 feet. So it's relatively, it's kind of a standard garage is about 22 feet or so. So that gives you a sense of the scale. So it's rather diminutive, and it's, even though it's a larger footprint, the scale is, we're trying to really work with the scale that's in the neighborhood currently. So this shows the topography as the street kind of slopes down towards the south there, and this is from the opposite side, a little further away, a little bit from above, and so as members have talked about, we are planning on a concrete. A poured concrete storm shelter space that is above grade, and so in the house. And the mechanical room will be in this area of the house. It is a slab on grade house, but it is built, and this is all engineered by our structural engineer and so forth. But it's a slab on grade house that will have foundation walls as if it were to have a crawl space or a basement, if that makes sense. So it's not just like a slab that sits on the, like a foot down below grade. It goes 4 feet down below grade, has footings, etc. The other thing I was going to mention is that we did quite a bit of effort in trying, we realized we have a, even though the lot, it's completely allowable and the lot is sizable, it's almost an acre or about an acre. The entire house is guttered, and those gutters go down in leaders, and there's a large retention system below grade, below the driveway here, and the overflow. And Chris was mentioning it, that the engineering department, we've been in contact with them as well. Our civil engineer has been in contact with them, and then the overflow would be towards the front yard. So there's no additional water pressure, let's say, to the neighboring properties. The house, the client requested, and I think the client would like to have a few words about this as well. The client requested this house. She wanted this to be a house based on universal design principles, and accessibility was a big deal here. And that's one of the reasons why we leveled the site off. Grade is pretty much at all the door sills, and so when you step out, there's very little change in height that needs to happen. Interior doors, for example, are 36 inches wide, etc. So it's based on that, and because of that, there's no need for the basement, and and as a matter of fact, it would be a potential issue, for mobility sake. So, and that's, I think with that, and I'm more than happy to answer any, or, attempt to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do the planning commissioners have any questions for Mr. Tigler? And I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Well, I think even if your name is Smith, right, it could be mispronounced. I'm from the Netherlands originally, and so they say there Tigelaar.
Tigelaar.
I would not want people to, I don't, it's okay, whatever, however you want to pronounce it, it's fine.
I'll try. Thank you. All right, now
welcome.
Enough about me. Any commissioners have questions?
Yeah. So,
Commissioner Olson?
Hi. So my only comment is, I noticed that you have 2 driveways, and is it possible to consider only having one? Because we're always trying to, reduce some of the hardscape out there, and so I just that's my question, just to have 2 driveways, 2 curb cuts. And if you could minimize that and replace that with green space, that would be nice.
I think so. And that was part of the retention system thinking as well, in terms of hardcover, trying to minimize the burden of flow as much as possible. This is part of that. The universal design thing where you drive in and can drive out again. So it's part of, as opposed to, backing out and going that route. So this is what the client wanted, and maybe the client can talk about this as well, but this is how they wanted this to be configured.
And do you have any other questions at this time? I think we lost Joanne for a moment. Do any other commissioners have? Oh, there you are. There you are.
No,
I lost you on my screen. Okay.
Oh no, I'm here, but no other questions.
Any other commissioners with questions? Okay. Mrs. Johnson, I understood that you may want to say something also. If you'd like to, this would be your opportunity.
Push the button. Okay. Leffert has explained it really well. When I first met with him, I told him that I was interested in having a home that no matter what your age or physical ability, you had the entire home accessible to you. So we are looking at hard flooring, wide doorways, lever handles, and no stairs. Stairs to me are a safety hazard if you're looking to design an accessible home. So I am giving up precious first floor space to a mechanical room. I am pouring concrete to line a room for a shelter in case of storms. I just can't see myself in a bathroom and lifting up a mattress, but so we'll go with the storm shelter. I don't think that's in the universal design manual either. And the 2 driveways also are an accessibility issue. I just want to make this home easy to live in, both as I age and for whoever might come next who has those sort of physical mobility issues. So that was the real emphasis on this house, and that's why it's been designed as it has. And we did make the plans available to everyone that got the Planning Commission's letter. We invited them to come to the home site and look at the plans. Only my 6 nearest neighbors showed up, and I've been in communication with them since we purchased the land. And they were all quite pleased to see that the design and the scale of the house fit the neighborhood really well. So we've had really good reception on it so far.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any further
any other questions? That
Well, I think you're good for the moment, but don't go away. You know, we will have a public hearing and maybe things will come up.
won't.
So,
I'll sit tight.
so this is the point in the call when members of the public can call in and give their input if they like. And the number to call is 1-800-374-0221 with conference ID number 1486462 and press *1. And because of delays between our conversation and the broadcast, we'll wait a minute or two just to see if anyone calls. And staff will let us know. If you do call, by the way, you'll have up to 3 minutes. Staff will let you know when you're approaching 3 minutes and when you've hit your 3-minute limit.
Nemerov, this is Communications Director Jennifer Bennerat. We do not have anyone on the call. Again, for this public hearing, as you just stated, I would recommend that you wait a minute or so before moving on.
Thank you. Jennifer, do you think we're good? Or should we wait another moment?
Move on.
Thanks. All right. Would a commissioner like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Is there a second? So we have a motion by Commissioner Agnew, second by Commissioner Miranda. Liz, for everyone watching, and we have to do a roll vote for everything so we can record it for posterity. Liz, could you do a roll vote?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. Thank you, Liz. So that brings it to the Planning Commission for discussion. We can have further questions, comments, anything. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share at this time? Hi, Commissioner Bennett.
Yeah, so I fully support this project. One level living accessibility is kind of, it's a smart way forward and what we should be encouraging. As an engineer, I just wanted to clarify some of the basement conversations that we've had and that we've had in the past, just to provide some historical rationale. I mean, the reason for a basement is, at least in Minnesota, is purely really climate driven. As alluded to by the client, there is foundation walls and footing. So in Minnesota, because we have frost, the ground freezes and frost lenses propagate downwards into the ground. And if you don't have a foundation deep enough, the strength of frost is enough to heave buildings, and then the cycle of freezing thawing will cause severe structural damage. So to mitigate that risk, we need to, at least in our zone, get foundations 42 inches below the ground. So you have to mitigate that structural risk, but then it's this blend of economics. So if you're already going 42 inches down into the ground, it's not that much more expensive to extend a little deeper and then get living space out of it. So because of that, that's why we have a lot of basements here and pretty much why codes are driven that way. Not to mention kind of the storm shelter aspect as well as natural refrigeration, which isn't as needed now because of, fast forward over the last 100 years, we have ways to refrigerate food a little more effectively than before. Limitations to that, and why some states even locations here wouldn't have a basement, is high groundwater. So if you're one, buy a body of water, and you won't want to pay to always pump out the water around your basement. And then two, if bedrock was really high, it's not like you'd chisel out bedrock to make a basement for yourself. But I just want to talk about that because I know we've had it come up a couple times, and I guess one consideration going forward, we want to encourage more one-level living, is it usually does cost a larger footprint, so not every lot in Edina has enough space to really accommodate a full family on one footprint. So it's something that we ought to be aware of, because there seems to be a trend to have one-level living. And if we're approving homes that don't have it, are there considerations that we can encourage, like having closets stacked above each other to allow for elevator shafts in the future and whatnot? But sorry, I just wanted to kind of share some of that historical relevance. But yeah, fully support this project. I like the trend and where it's going. And congrats.
Okay.
And Commissioner Strauss, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, just quickly, kind of following up on Jimmy's. I found the narrative, the presenters, it was really intriguing, and like I said, I fully support this project. And it just talked about so many kind of relevant issues of livability, and to tell you the truth, this is one project where I'm really curious to see in its final completion. I'm intrigued. So my compliments. I think as many of us, we are facing some of those same questions of navigating our homes, with basements and stairs and every morning. So thank you.
Okay.
Any other commissioners?
This is Joanne. I support this also. I think it's a great idea, and yeah, one-level living, and I think it's a nice design too. Again, I would still push for one driveway, but that's not enough to prevent me from approving it.
Commissioner Agnew, do you have something you'd like to say also?
I was going to make a motion.
Okay.
Move to approve this variance subject to the findings listed and subject to that conditions outlined in the staff report.
Okay, like a motion. Kate, your speaker, I couldn't hear you that well clearly for a moment there.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Am I better now?
Yes.
Okay. Did you catch my motion?
So you'd like to make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so before we do, I'd like to add my comment, because I also support this. I think it looks like just a wonderful house. And just as an aside, I want to thank Commissioner Bennett. That was a really well done presentation. It was almost like you had been prepped in advance and you had taken time to. It just flowed really well. So thank you. Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. Thank you. Then, so Chris, will this go to council, or is that a final approval? What's the future for this variance?
Yes, it will not go in front of the council unless it is appealed to council within 10 days. Otherwise, the decision stands.
Well, congratulations, Mrs. Johnson. I hope you and your husband enjoy the house very much. Our next matter tonight is a public hearing for a 23.5-foot front yard setback variance to allow for a canopy structure with a sign for an existing ATM for Gateway Bank at 4528 France Avenue. And I believe appearing for the city will be the Emily Boddicker, Assistant City Planner.
Yes, thank you. Gateway Bank is requesting a front yard setback variance to allow a canopy structure over an existing ATM and drive-up banking chute to be placed 11.5 feet from the property line at 4528 France Avenue. The subject property, 4528 France Avenue, is located on the west side of France Avenue, south of Sunnyside Road. The applicant is asking for the 23.5-foot variance from the required 35-foot front yard setback requirement. The ATM and drive-up banking chute is existing on site and was approved with the redevelopment site plan that was presented in 2016. The canopy is considered a structure, and therefore it is required to meet the 35-foot front yard setback requirement for primary structures. So staff believes that the front yard setback variance that is requested is justified. The canopy structure would be placed above the existing ATM and banking chute, as you can see here. It exists on site today. The site also received a setback variance for a freestanding sign. So there are similar setbacks that currently exist on the subject properties today. You can see on your screen there where their existing freestanding sign exists on site. Canopy structures are often found over ATM and banking chutes to provide protection both from cars and to protect patrons from the elements. The overhang on the ATM is minimal. It's around 3 feet, and it's not a drive-through type structure. It's just to protect someone who would be standing at the ATM. The proposed setback is due to the existing layout of the multi-tenant commercial building. The existing layout, the parking lot, the drive lane, and the existing ATM, when the site was redeveloped, that layout was approved. With that approval, the small lot size, the single-family homes to the west, the existing structures and parking lot drive aisles on site were considered at that time. The existing conditions were not created by the redevelopment of the site. And the proposed canopy is to provide protection to the existing ATM and banking chute. With the approval in 2016, if the cover ATM structure was proposed at that time, it likely would have been approved with the redevelopment of that site. The location of the proposed ATM structure does not alter the character of the neighborhood. The subject property is located in a commercial zone, and the ATM currently exists on site today. The neighborhood commercial area has buildings and freestanding signs that sit closer to the street than the proposed canopy structure, so staff believes it blends in with the neighborhood. Tonight, staff's recommendation is to approve the requested variance to allow a canopy structure with signage 11.5 feet from the property line at Gateway Bank, which is at 4528 France Avenue, subject to the findings and the conditions listed in the staff report. And I will point out that one of the conditions in the staff report is that any signage that would be proposed on the canopy structure would need to meet the city sign code. And with that, I'll answer any questions. The applicant also included some different elevations that show the existing ATM and banking chute with the proposed structure over the top.
Thank you, Emily. Do any planning commissioners have any questions for staff at this time? Okay. You must nail it pretty well. So would the applicant like to say anything?
Can you hear me? This is Brian Maxwell with Gateway Bank.
Yes, can hear you.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I think she did a wonderful job just describing exactly what we're trying to attempt here with the cover over the ATM and the drive-up teller tube that actually goes underneath the drive and then up into the bank. And honestly, when we had the site put together, I really wanted to avoid having to put a structure over the ATM and the drive-up tube. But just with the elements and safety, because there will be some lighting here, it just became obvious that we need to have a cover over this area, not only for clients, but just for the public who's using the ATM. And we're trying to make it as minimal as possible, but also still be protective. And I think that we've done a good job designing it, and Spectrum did a great job putting this together and trying to keep it as minimal as possible, but then also look nice and fit with the buildings and our style as a bank. So thank you.
Do any commissioners have questions for the applicant? Commissioner Agnew?
I do have a question. Thank you. So it looks like there might be two separate components. It looks like there's the actual physical structure that has the canopy, I think it's called. But then it also looks like there's one of those clearance flags. Are those two separate components?
Yes, they are, just in an effort to keep any trucks or trailers or anything from hitting it. We've been advised by the signage company that to avoid, not that it's going to stop it from happening, but to avoid it as much as possible, to have that as a structure that's somewhat, I think it's, they may be on the call, but 10 feet maybe from the structure, so anyone that pulls up could see if they were going to fit under the structure.
Okay. Do you have any imagery that happens to show both? I think both the artifacts and the proposal kind of show each individually.
There wasn't anything submitted with both.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Any other commissioners with a question?
I do.
Okay, Lou.
Is there any imagery from the street? What it would look like from the street?
Let me share my screen here, Lou. I don't have anything with the proposed street view. I have the image of how it looks today. If you'd like to see that, I can pull that up again.
No, I got it. I mean, it's in my neighborhood. I know what it looks like. No, I was just wondering if, because at the angle, I'm wondering how, because they show it with signage on it, and I was just wondering how obtrusive that would look from the street. But we see it from a car's perspective driving in, but we don't see it from a pedestrian perspective from the street or anything. Yep,
and to clarify, there is signage existing on the ATM itself that currently exists today. So that in the elevations that were shown, that is existing. And then there were some additional, on the elevations that were submitted, there were some additional logos that were included on the new structure.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So I had a question that's kind of a follow-up to Commissioner Agnew's, and maybe it's just all it is just a repetition of Commissioner Agnew's. But on item 4 of the applicant document, there's a drawing, and there's just kind of also a photo with a drawing on it. And I was just more confused by the drawing. The photo with the drawing kind of reflects image 3 also, which I thought was a really nice presentation. But then on image 4, on the drawing portion on the left hand of the pages, there's this gray two-sided bar, which I think is the canopy, and then there's just a single like gray pole on the right, and I was a little confused by that. Is that going? Is the item on the left, is that going to be over the ATM, and the gray pole that's on the right, is that going to be to the right of the car, or?
The way I understand it is, I don't know which slide it is, but it's the slide that shows where the drive is. So you kind of hug the curb on the driver's side. And so the first thing you will come to is that slide that has the clearance bar. And then if you don't hit the clearance bar, you will proceed to be able to go underneath the canopy, which is then another 10 feet or so. I don't know the exact distance. To the ATM, so that we don't have anyone taking out the structure.
So both of these items, both of these like these gray ones, they're both 9 feet tall, and one has a 5-foot overhang at 90 degrees, and one's just 9 foot tall, just only perpendicular, only a vertical. Those are all as you approach the ATM. They're not like on each side. They're not like behind the ATM and then to the passenger side of the car.
I see what your question is. I believe that is the front view of it and the side view of the same clearance bar.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's all my questions. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, well, then again, I should just have a macro I could hit and repeat this. This is a public hearing. Any member of the public would like to make a comment about this, provide testimony, can call in at 1-800-374-0221, conference ID 1486462. Press star 1. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. Staff will time the speakers, let you know when you're about to hit your 3 minutes and when you're hitting the 3 minutes. Again, we may have received comments on this. If you've submitted already, you don't need to call in also to make sure we hear your comments. We do have a little bit of delay between this the conversation we're having by the computer and what people see on the television. So I'll wait a minute for people to, or what's being broadcast. We'll wait a minute for people to call in, and staff will let us know when we can move on.
Chair Nemerov, this is Communications Director Jennifer Bennerat. I'm feeling very unpopular tonight. I have no callers again for this public hearing, but I would recommend that we wait just a minute or so, as you described, in case there are people trying to call in.
Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer, do you think think we can move on?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Miranda. And a second by Commissioner Strauss. It's just one of the video things. We have to do these formal procedures for public, representing governmental action. Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. So then the Planning Commission, do any Planning Commissioners have anything they'd like to say about this? Any further questions, explanation of why you might be feeling one way or another, or perhaps a motion?
I do.
Commissioner Moran.
Yeah, I just want to thank Emily for pointing out that the part of staff's recommendation is that any signage on the canopy is required to meet the city's sign code requirements. So that's really my only concern with this. I mean, it seems pretty unobtrusive. It seems very useful for anybody driving or walking up there. So that was my only concern, and the city has addressed it, so I'm good with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Miranda. Any other commissioners? For me personally, one thing that really resonated was the applicant's comment that they tried to make this as minimal as possible. When I saw just the title canopy, I had envisioned something like that was going to go up and over and down to just totally like you're getting gas or something. You'd be totally protecting the car from the elements. And I was worried that was going to create some kind of environmental or be some kind of issue. But I think they did a really nice job of meeting that goal of making this as minimal while achieving some protection from the elements for people walking up and using the ATM. And the lighting, I think, sounds like a good idea. So I thought that was very good. Any other comments by the commission? Any motions, excuse me?
And move to approve, subject to the conditions of Staff?
I second.
Commissioner Miranda, Commissioner Olson, motion second. Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda,
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett,
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew,
Aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. So that's been approved. Emily, does that go to council?
Nope, that does not. Unless
Okay.
it's appealed, this would be a final action.
Thank you. And that takes us to our next public hearing. Good luck to the bank. Congratulations on the.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Our next matter is a site plan review for 3451 Park Lawn Avenue for York Gardens Senior Living. And presenting on behalf of the city is Community Development Director Carrie Teague.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. So back in 2009, the city approved a development for a 76-unit, 4-story senior housing project. This is located in the southeast corner of the city, just west of York and east of Centennial Lakes. So here's a look at that development. So this is the 4-story, 76-unit building. It's connected to the 7500 York 9-story cooperative. So a rather large site. The proposal here before you is to remodel a therapy area within the building to add 3 units, 3 bedrooms to the structure. So there's no changes to the site plan, no changes to the exterior of the building. In terms of the density of this overall project, based on the property is zone plan senior residential, it would allow up to 44 units an acre on this site. The density here with the 3 units is 29 units an acre, so well within what would be allowed here. The project currently exceeds its parking regulations or the parking requirements. So they don't really need to add any additional parking. They have provided a proof of parking plan should there be some pressure on the exterior parking stalls. That was submitted as part of your packet, but that wouldn't be required here. This is a look at the site plan where they could add them filling in the green space, but they don't believe that that is necessary. So everything is code compliant here, but because it's an increase in the number of units, it does require a site plan review. But a pretty straightforward one in staff's eyes, and would recommend approval subject to those findings and conditions in your staff report. With that, I will stop there and answer any questions. Susan Farr from the applicant is on the line with us should you have any questions.
Thank you, Carrie. Do any commissioners have questions for Carrie? I had one. Carrie, in 2009, what kind of approvals were needed? Why were approvals needed in 2009?
Yeah, they needed a rezoning. I don't recall why they needed the rezoning. Maybe it wasn't zoned for senior housing previously, this little parcel in the corner. But looking back, they did require the rezoning to do it.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Well, the applicant's opportunity. Would the applicant like to say something about this project?
Sure. So my name is Susan Farr, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Ebenezer. And I'm at 2722 Park Avenue, but next month we will be moving to Ebenezer. We'll have the Dairy Queen headquarters in Edina. So we're excited about moving to your neighborhood. Thank you so much. When we built this, we did like a monkey survey asking people what they would like, and they mentioned next door, because it's connected, that they would love to walk over and have the therapy area, and it never got used. And it right now people are putting walkers and wheelchairs, and a lot of the people that it's their home just said, it's kind of turned into a junk area, and I would rather have neighbors. And next door, with all the seniors living in the cooperative, if they age a place, which they do, and they want to move there because a lot of their friends are there, they just said, turn it into apartments. It's kind of just turned into nothing. And so that's why we just said, let's do something, because it shouldn't be a big storage area, and there's too much wasted square footage. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Farr or Barr? I don't know if I heard it.
Farr, F as in Frank, yeah.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any questions? Well, hold on. We may get into this. Is a public hearing, so something may come up. So, if no further questions for staff or the applicant, well, this is an opportunity for members of the public, if they'd like to provide testimony on this matter, then now would be the opportunity to dial 1-800-374-0221, conference ID 148-6462. Press star 1. You'll have up to 3 minutes. Staff, will put you in a queue, and then they'll let you know when you're approaching your 3 minutes. And when you've hit the 3 minutes, so with that, because of technology, we will wait a moment between any time lag between when we're having our conversation, when it's actually going out over the air. And staff, Jennifer Benarott, City Communication Director, can you kind of guide us as to if anyone calls and if we're ready to move on?
To feel like a broken record, Chair Nemeroff, I do not have anyone on the call right now for this public hearing, but I do recommend you wait just a minute or so in case someone calls in.
Sometimes it's like repeating, Dave's not here. I don't know. Nobody. Carrie gets that one. Thank you, Carrie. We'll just wait a little longer.
Safe for you to move on with your meeting.
Thanks. For formalities with our video conferencing, could we get a motion to close the public hearing? Any commissioner?
I move to close the public hearing.
Moved and seconded by Commissioners Olson and Agnew. Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Chair Nemeroff?
Aye. Thank you. So now it's the opportunity for the Planning Commission to discuss, ask further questions, or make a motion regarding approval or denial of this proposal. Would anyone like to say anything?
I make a motion to approve. Is it? I'm trying to think. The proposal or the
site plan approval.
Yes, I make a motion that we approve the site plan approval for Parkland Avenue.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Strauss, second by Commissioner Agnew. Is there any further discussion? Just jump in if you did. Liz, would you please do a roll vote?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Chair Nemeroff?
Aye. Well, congratulations on passing it to the applicant. Ms. Farr and your team.
Thank you so much for your time this evening.
You're welcome. And so that takes us to our fifth public hearing of the evening, which is a public hearing regarding for zoning ordinance amendments regarding setbacks in the greater Southdale area, building material requirements in the greater Southdale area, requiring affordable housing in commercial zoning districts, design experience guidelines, which is part of what we talked about in Southdale, and the number of garage stalls for various types of housing. And appearing for the city is Community Development Director Carrie Teague.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. So as you know, this is one that we've been working on over the last several months. And as Chair Nemiroff had indicated, it's really divided into three categories: codifying the design experience guidelines, codifying the affordable housing policy into the commercial zoning designation where multifamily housing is a conditionally permitted use, and then going from the two-stall garage requirement for single-family homes to single stall. So just a quick, it's a long ordinance, so that there's a lot of places where the requirements needed to fit into the code. But the first 10 sections of the ordinance before you deal with setbacks. So within the design experience guideline, we required or would like to require a 30-foot setback from the curb to any building. Basically all the east-west streets, some north-south streets, with the exception of France and York. On France and York, we're looking for 50-foot setbacks. So those standards would be put in place. In terms of building design, any new building would require 75% transparency on any front facade that faces a public realm. The first 60 feet from the ground up would need to be brick or stone. Again, it would be that front-facing facade that faces any public realm. We would require a 20-foot first floor height, and there would also be you couldn't have a wall longer than 200 feet without a 90-degree angle or changing direction. The section 11 deals with the affordable housing. So again, the affordable housing policy essentially codified for a conditionally permitted use multifamily residential in our commercial zoning districts. The buy-in provision that we talked about at the Planning Commission, and the way we settled on that at the last work session was $125,000 per unit with a yearly escalator established by the Housing Price Index plus a 1% escalator. And then the final section is amending the garage standards from 2 stalls to 1 stall. And I will stop there and answer any questions that you may have. And then you'll be asked to hold the public hearing.
Thank you, Carrie. Do any commissioners have any questions at this time? We'll have opportunity for commentary later, of course. Do you have questions for staff now? With that, then, if it's okay, I mean, obviously we're commissioners, we can have questions later. I'd like to open this up to public hearing and allow anyone who wishes to call in that opportunity at this time. So hitting the macro again, and you'll be hearing from City Communications Director Jennifer Bennerat with her repeated commentary again in a moment. But if a resident is listening, would like to call in and give testimony about these ordinances, the number to call is 1-800-374-0221, conference ID 1486462. That's 1486462. Press *1 to be placed in a queue. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. Staff will let you know when you're approaching 3 minutes and when you've hit 3 minutes. Also, just so you know, there is a delay between the conversation we're having and when this is broadcast, so we'll wait a little bit to give people an opportunity. Jennifer, anything further you'd like to say?
I do not have anyone on the call right now.
We'll give it a moment. It does seem, I mean, there are always some things happening with technology, but it does seem like these are getting smoother. Is that, Jennifer, is that kind of your sense also?
Do you think our electronic meetings have been going a bit better? We did have a glitch last night with city council, so I'm just going to knock on wood and hope yours continues to go well.
Right, things can always happen. Well, let's just wait another moment. Jennifer, you let us know when you think it's safe to move on.
You can move on now.
Okay, thank you. So that brings it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. I mean, does anyone have comments that they'd like to share or any questions at this time? Or a motion?
I do.
Please, your opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, so unfortunately I missed the minimum garage stall requirements work session, but I mean, is there really, I just wonder if there's even a reason for even having one as a requirement. I mean, at least in my neighborhood and areas around here, I mean, it seems like the minimum is 2 and usually 3. So, I mean, is there any pressure in the city to have, I mean, are we forcing developers to have one stall?
Yeah, no, not at all. It's just that it would establish a minimum. They could still build a 3-stall, a 4-stall, and 8-stall if they would like. They're just not forced to put in 2. They could put just 1 if they wanted to.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Comments, questions, motions?
I would move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Would anyone like to second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Strauss. Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Carrie, now what's the path for these ordinances?
This will go to the City Council on August 18th.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, everyone. So now we move ahead, and we've done with our public hearings section of the agenda to reports and recommendations. I don't believe we have any, do we?
No.
Correspondence and petitions. We received one item of correspondence. Carrie, is there anything that you'd like to address on that matter?
In the packet?
No, we received a correspondence item unrelated today. Is that, I know it's something you worked on.
Oh, the Crocker. I don't recall the exact address.
Yeah. Is there anything happening?
Yeah, so we received a letter from a neighbor who had some concerns that this was a variance that was approved by the Planning Commission a couple months ago. And there was some concern from the neighbor that they were going to build the plan differently from what the Planning Commission had approved. And they had received a demolition permit, so they're doing some work to the site. They've not received a building permit. But the bottom line of it is we would not issue a permit unless it's consistent with what the Planning Commission had recommended, or the conditions that were put on the approval. So if they choose to deviate, it would have to come back through the Planning Commission. So the homeowner and the builder were notified of that today. I don't know yet what they're going to do, if they're going to reapply or build, exactly what was approved by the Planning Commission. But I intend to notify the neighbor I was kind of hoping to have an answer from the property owner how they were going to proceed before I let the neighborhood know. But we are working on it. We were working on that today.
Thank you for your prompt reaction, your prompt response. I think that's it for correspondence petitions. Karen, member comments. Do any members have any comments they'd like to share this evening?
Chair Nemerov, this is Staff Liz Olson. I just wanted to circle back to the last public hearing, and I might be incorrect, but I don't know that we made a motion. I believe we just closed the public hearing.
Oh, I thought we did approve it. Commissioner Olson recommended approval and Commissioner Strauss seconded it.
Okay, my apologies. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Better to ask. I think there's been at least once when you've caught the fact that we hadn't done one. So thank you, Liz. I think that's happened in the past. I think this time we did do it. Carrie?
I thought we did, yeah.
Yeah, you were presenting. Any member comments? Sorry. Chair member comments. Chair has no comments. Staff, Carrie, do you have anything? I mean, you had a busy night.
I did. Just to update you on the council, we had quite a few items on there. For final action, the council took final action on 4 projects last night that came through the Planning Commission. You recall the variance that was a 4-3 approval vote on Alden. We had the neighbors had appealed that decision. The vote at the Planning Commission was 4-3. You recall that's the one we went back and forth with several motions. But it did go to the city council, and they did deny the variance request. And the vote was unanimous, so that project did get denied. The next one was the Hankerson townhomes. You recall they reduced the number of units from 10 down to 8, and the council did approve that project. That's a comprehensive plan amendment, so the next step for staff is to notify adjacent cities and then submit to the Met Council. So I'm sure, just as a little aside, Met Council will be thrilled with us that they just approved our plan, and now a couple months later, we're submitting an amendment, but it is what it is. Then the other was the addition on the Southdale Fairview Hospital for M Health. They did approve that one. And then the subdivision on Abbott, they did approve that one as well. They did conduct public hearings for the proposal for the tap rooms and distillery ordinance. They just did first reading of that ordinance, and they would take final action at their next meeting. And then the Valley View Wooddale conditional use permit. They held the public hearing and then continued action. That's the way the council has been operating with this virtual reality that we have. They're holding the public hearings, having discussion, but then taking action at their second meeting. So that one would be coming up. And on consent, we did have I think we're finally done with the Amundsen flats now. We got all the easements signed and agreed to last night and the final site plan agreement. So look for construction to start on that project soon. And that is it for me.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Do any planning commissioners have any questions for staff?
You know, I had a quick one. Sorry, I couldn't find my mute
Okay.
button. So
Commissioner
where's
Olson.
that cursor? Yeah, where's the missing cursor? So Carrie, so the council is going to be approving the comp plan on August 5th. Is that correct? Or
That's the plan. Yep. So it's posted up on Better Together now, but we were gonna bring the resolution to the city council on August 5th for them to, basically the action is to put the comprehensive plan into effect. Yeah, and also as a reminder too, for those who weren't at the work session, that we do have a work session with the city council on August 5th as well. We're going to talk about some of our ordinances that we're working on, and I suppose we could talk about the comp plan too.
Any other questions? Joanne, do you have any follow-up on the comp plan or anything else? Thank you, everyone. That kind of conclude. Carrie, did you have anything else? Sorry, do you have anything else you want?
Nope, that's it for me.
So next item on the agenda is adjournment. We have to have a motion and a second and a roll vote. But anyone like to make a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Agnew.
Second.
Commissioner Schultz. Liz, can you do the roll vote, please?
Okay. Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Commissioner Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.